Good morning, everyone. How are you all doing? Feeling energized and excited? Good. Me too. I'm very excited to be here. I could just stay here all morning looking at you and actually not saying anything, but you look like you're itching for a paradigm shift. So in that case, I'll go ahead. The truth be told, I'm here to get your help more than anything. Don't be fooled by my Harvard gig or the fact that people pay me their hard-earned money to help with parenting. The reality is, I'm just an average mom fumbling my way through raising 3 feisty kids. Cam is 9, Ty is 7, and Eve is 4. So as you can see, they have a lot of energy, and this is sort of my everyday. And my goal is quite simple, actually. I'm here to raise good kids. And more specifically, how do I raise good guys? Good guys who will go out into the world and feel secure enough in themselves to stand up for women and to stand up for all people, and generally not be the creeps who just take what they want because they can. And the reality is, as you can see, I'm parenting from a very privileged position. I'm raising 2 white boys in a pretty privileged position. And how do I raise a girl who recognizes good guys and doesn't accept the not so good ones? So I'm here to get your help with that, and I hope you can do that. But before we start, I want to ask a question. What comes to mind when you hear the word feminist? And just notice in yourself what thoughts or phrases or images come up, and just hang on to those for a minute. We'll get back to that later. So the story that really led me here was from the fall. It was October, a few months back, and it was a Monday afternoon, the day I'm home early from work, and I stood at my stove prepping dinner as my then 6-year-old son, Tyler, lay on the floor behind me, completely absorbed into his iPad, which is really for another TED Talk or TEDx Talk. But that is what he does. And he was playing Minecraft, living in that world. And I stood at the stove cooking. And that day I was listening to NPR. And this particular day, the NPR host was talking about Harvey Weinstein and other prominent men who were recently accused of sexual harassment and assault. I thought, wow, this is really eye-opening. And then the host started talking about statistics. And she said, for every 1 in 6 women, our women in our country, 1 in 6 will be a victim of either attempted or completed rape. That's insane, isn't it? I don't know, it blew my mind. And then obviously, my mind went to my daughter. And what does that mean for her? That means in her very small preschool class, 1 to 2 of those little girls could be a victim of rape one day. That is mind-blowing. And if you think that doesn't happen here at places like Dartmouth, think again. It happens everywhere. In 2014, for every 1,000 women here at Dartmouth, 6 to 7 reported rape. That means that's a really pretty big number, considering we know how many cases of rape go unreported. And that doesn't include other types of sexual violence or sexual assault or sexual harassment. That's a lot of people. That holy shit feeling you have right now, I felt listening to this news report. The host was bewildered at the breadth and depth of these revelations, and I felt it too. I remember in the fall just being blown away. It felt like every day there was new news of a new guy, a good guy, being a secret perv, pulling his penis out around every corner. I asked my husband, who's very patient, and I said, is this just how guys are wired? Do you want to go to work and pull your penis out? He's a smart guy and very promptly said no. But then I thought, this is a problem, and this is something I have to talk about. So at this moment, I just became really aware that this is a big problem. And I went and I realized there were big 6-year-old ears in the room with me as I'm listening to this, cooking and thinking through all this stuff, and I realized my son's lying on the floor beside me. So I rush over to the radio and I reach to turn it down, and then I have this moment of consciousness, and I think, this is the problem. We're sheltering our developing boys. Every time there's news that's difficult or sexual, we reach to turn down the radio or turn off the TV, and our boys are missing out on these really important conversations. So I decide, I know what message I want my boys to get. At ages 6 and 8, they're in the middle of their moral and cognitive development. I have this captive audience with these little lanky legs and these sponges as heads standing in front of me, and I know I need to talk to them directly about this. Piaget, a famous psychologist, says that children between the ages of 5 and 10 see morality through the lens of other. My guys are in between the ages of 5 and 10. So ideas shared by me and you and coaches and teachers and government leaders are seen as absolute and unbreakable. Yes, neuroplasticity tells us that we can influence their thoughts and behaviors as they get older, but the reality is we have this captive audience right now staring back at us. I need to say something. I know I can actually make a change. I can change their brain development, and this could actually last a lifetime. So I back away from the radio. I go back to the stove. I don't know what I'm going to say. I kind of wring my hands, and I'm panicking on the inside a little bit. And then I just say to myself, Bobbi, like, come on. You got to say something here. Just say anything. So then I just say to him, hey, Ty, are you listening to this? Did you hear this? There's this really famous movie guy, and he was touching women when they didn't want to be touched, and he was saying inappropriate things, and now he's in big trouble. I just kind of put that out there, and I stepped back, and then I sat in what felt like the most pregnant pause. I had images of him butchering the story to his friends on the playground, and parents calling me, being like, what the hell are you telling your kid? What the hell is your kid telling my kid? And then Ty pops his head up, and I see that he's not shocked, and he's not traumatized, but he just very matter-of-factly says, what? That's illegal? Didn't Trump do that? He's 6. I dropped to the floor. This happened. So, and I'm not here to make political statements, but I'm here to talk about the messaging in our community. And so in this moment, I realized that I have to deal with my own discomfort around this and move towards these conversations and bring these topics up to my little boys who are going to be our future men. So I just quite simply say to Ty, yes, bud, that's true. Trump did say inappropriate things, and that's not okay. We don't do that in our family. I don't do that. Dad doesn't do that. And you're not to do that either. Got it? Sure, Mom. Back to iPad. So in this moment, my head's spinning, but he just nonchalantly hops back into Minecraft. And then I think, I really need to talk about these things. A few minutes later, he pops his head back up and he says, Mom, yeah, bud, what's for dinner? That's the life of a 6-year-old boy, but it's these small and fleeting moments that we need to capitalize on. So days and weeks went by, and I thought a lot about the messaging in our community and the message that my boys get. Things that I don't agree with, that they're taking in, that I don't even realize. And then I realized this goes so much deeper than just talking directly about sexual responsibility. It's really about gender inequality and how we, particularly our boys and men, see our girls and women. So how do we reconcile this? What do we do about this? So we need to talk about these things, but they're things that get in the way. And that's in part our psychology and our socialization. So I'll talk a little bit about that. And the first thing that really gets in the way is implicit gender bias. And I'm sure many of you probably know what this is, but it's when we make assumptions about others based on their gender. So our brains are always looking for shortcuts. They're looking to put people into categories because it's just more efficient. So girls, pink, sweet, fragile. Boys, active, strong, blue. Our brains aren't trying to be mean, but they're really trying to be more efficient here. A large study done by Harvard found that, it was from 2005 to 2015, found that 76% of people, men and women, believe that men are more suited for careers and women for homemaking. 76%. So if this whole room, out of all of us here, 167 people believe that, either consciously or unconsciously. That's a big number. And our brains don't do that to be mean or cruel or sexist, but they're just trying to be efficient. They're using prior information we've learned from our parents and families, to make assumption about current information, where we are today, and that, in fact, becomes our worldview. So what do we do about this? We have to recognize this in ourselves. I don't share this with you to make you feel bad, but I share this with you because this is a brain thing. We all do this. And we can actually move forward from this if we can acknowledge it and see it in ourselves and not get hung up on the fact that we're thinking some of these things, but actually acknowledge it and make a choice to do something different. So getting back to the original question, what did you think of when you heard the word feminist? What images came to mind for you? What thoughts came to mind? What feelings? And kind of picture what that is for you. And then ask yourself, where did you get that information? Who told you that? I'm wondering if you imagine someone like this. I don't know, I kind of do. Honestly, what a feminist is simply a person who believes in equality for men and women. It's really simple. There's not much more to it than that. But we have all these ideas of what a feminist is that burden us down and make us feel really uncomfortable about it. And this is where cognitive dissonance comes in. And cognitive dissonance is when we have two opposing thoughts that creates a mental discomfort. So I like smoking, and I know it causes cancer. It creates a mental discomfort. Personally, me, I would love to eat a box of cookies at like 10 p.m. at night, but I know that's really bad for a lot of health reasons. That creates a mental discomfort. In terms of feminism, yes, I obviously believe in gender equality for men and women, which I think most of us probably do, but that word, feminist, kind of sucks, and I just can't identify with it. So what do we do about this? So a story came up for me when I was in Miami with my friends. I took off from Miami a few years back with 5 of my good mom friends. It was the first time we had been away in a long, long time. We left our combined 14 small children home with our husbands. We hopped on a plane and we got to Miami, and we're just totally psyched. We went right to the beach, we're sitting in the sand, we're drinking margaritas, and we're talking. And I can't remember exactly what we're talking about, but in this moment, I just said, do you guys identify as a feminist? You should have seen their faces. It was like I just dropped the biggest lame-o bomb on the first day of our vacation. They're like, oh, Bobbi, buzzkill. Who brought the psychologist? Boo. And then the questions started. So what do you mean by feminist? What are you getting at here? What are you trying to ask me? And it was the squirmy brain of cognitive dissonance, and I could see it from a mile away. But the sentiment was, yes, I obviously believe in gender equality, but no, I don't identify with that term. I'm not an angry woman who hates men or wants to be better than them. And I like my husband, like most of the time. And, sorry, Mark. And I like being feminine. I like wearing dresses, I like wearing lipstick, and I like cooking for my family. But how do I reconcile those things? And although I outwardly identified as a feminist, it really wasn't. I struggled with those things internally too. At a TED Talk, Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, who's a Nigerian author, said, being feminist is like being pregnant. You either are or you are not. And being feminist and being feminine are not mutually exclusive. So you can go ahead and you can be feminist and you can wear your heels and you can do what you want, but it's really about being you and standing up for gender equality. And you know, as a psychologist and someone who thinks about these things, I'm not immune to this. Gender bias and cognitive dissonance comes with me too. You know, and this comes to work with me, and it will come to work with all of you too. So as students here, you're gonna go one day and work, and you have to notice these things in yourself. So I was sitting with a patient a few years back who's probably similar to a lot of guys you know, a really high-achieving college student, and he was working on anxiety and stress. And this one particular day, he was talking about his relationship with his girlfriend. And in this talk, he's going on about his relationship, and I'm doing the stereotypical psychologist thing. Interesting. Tell me more, how did you feel? And then he, somewhere in there, he says, and obviously I'm a feminist, yada, 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 and goes on with his story. And I stop dead in my tracks in my mind, and I think, I wonder what he means by that. Is he emasculated in some way? What are the power dynamics like? Do we need to explore this? So in that moment, I wasn't just unconsciously judging him, I was pathologizing him. I was creating his clearly articulated identity as a feminist into a relationship problem. So it's not my proudest clinical moment, and I'm sure none of you will seek my services, but you know, I bring it up because we need to have some self-awareness around this. These things happen, they happen unconsciously, and we need to notice them. Because I know when we notice them, we have a choice in how we respond. So now when someone speaks up as a feminist, I see them as kind, courageous, and smart, and they believe in gender equality. So this moment, in part, shifted how I see that label. So I'm not here to finger wag bad boys or bad ambivalent feminists, but the reality is the next generation of Louis C.K.'s and Mario Batali's and Kevin Spacey's are already here. They're on our playing fields, they're sitting in our classrooms, and we need to say something. We have this captive audience now with these little boys in front of us. And fingers crossed, those guys aren't my boys or your brothers or the kids you know from home, but the reality is some of them are. And we need to make a choice about what we say to them. We can either wait and see if our boys are the ones who happen to push a girl past her limit as he's fumbling to figure out his own sexuality, or worse, becomes the guy who intentionally takes advantage of his younger female coworkers. And we all have a captive audience in front of us. You and me, it doesn't really matter who you are, me as a parent, you in other ways. But we know we need to bring this up, and we need to bring this up now. What research tells us is that rapists don't see themselves that way. But they will say, yes, I have non-consensual sex. But they don't identify as a rapist. And we know these transgressions for these guys start early. They start in high school, they start in college, and they start with people they know. So I know I need to move towards these conversations and through the discomfort, and I encourage you to do the same to me. So the norms in our society override our internal beliefs. So if you don't actually think about this, you're not going to do anything different. You have to move towards it and say something. Acknowledge gender inequity. Notice cognitive dissonance in yourself. Notice implicit gender bias, and say something different. You might have a thought, but a thought is just a neural firing. It doesn't have to become an action or a word. So notice what you're thinking and say something different, even if it's different than what you've thought. And the repair is much more important than the rupture. Expect we're going to make ruptures. None of us are perfect in this. I think about this, and I do this all the time. So say something different. It's the repair that's more important. Secondly, if somebody asks, say, yes, I am a feminist. All you're saying is, yes, I believe in equal rights for men and women. And even if this is a bit uncomfortable for you or not how you see yourself, this is really important for our younger generation. This is really important for our young boys and our young girls who hear our moms and dads and big brothers say, yes, absolutely, I believe in gender equality. And say something early. It doesn't have to be perfect, but just say something. You can fumble your way through it. Speak up and be a leader in this. Feminist boys are our future men. Thank you.